Warning, the following podcast contains spoilers for Fazbear Fright books. If you do not want to hear them, I suggest just not listening or getting the book yourself, whatever. Otherwise, minor language warning, and yeah, that's about it. Enjoy. The following is a recording for The Breaking Wheel, aka Fazbear Fright, story numero 20, and the second one, In the Cliffs. I just did the Cliffs, so of course, naturally, The Breaking Wheel is next. It was originally supposed to be the starting thing for it, but I'm guessing the cover art would not have been very appropriate, judging on who the main antagonist of this book is. Okay, so we start off with the character named Reed, who is going to be our main protagonist of the story. And we have his best friends Shelly and Pickle, who are both science nerds. Kinda like him. Not exactly, though. And the book starts off with him saying, "I hate him." Basically, he doesn't like the bully, aka Julius, in the story. Julius is the average bully, He kind of does bullies. Very rude. So, Shelly basically just says to ignore him and stuff. And the teacher, Miss Billings, of course, butts in when he's saying something. The usual stuff. Now, they're in a robotics class, so they, obviously talk about robotics. And currently they're building robotic endoskeletons and such for class, which is really the only tie-in with Five Nights at Freddy's that we get in this story. It's kind of a very loose tie-in, but it's not exact either. So, it's later revealed, a few pages later, that Julius has stolen bits and parts from Pickle's project, which will play a big role later on in the story. From there, we just get some backstory on how Pickle and Shelly had been his friends for a while, and how Pickle has a robot that's small, and how Shelly has a dog robot that she built, and how Reed himself just has a random human-looking robot. And it does not compare to either of them. Now, he only went into this class because, his friends were in there. And on top of this, he is kind of in love with Shelly. They're currently freshmen in high school. Just in case, if you want to know that. Actually, it probably is important. So, Shelly and Reed have a pretty good connection, as well as Pickle, but they're more, kind of just stuck in their own worlds, how they read books and stuff and just get stuck inside. Julius is still there, in the classroom. He's just being a bully. And Reed shoots him a dirty look. Shelly had said to Reed once that his hair was very dreamy and stuff. But, it's still a bully. So, Julius says, "Why does this have to use an RF remote?" Julius whined to Miss Billings. "I don't want this stupid remote to be telling my exoskeleton what to do." And then Reed says, "My ears." His ears hurt from Julius's crying. Oh, that's hilarious. So Julius wears expensive clothes, the average stuff, the very pretty things like that. Just pretty things. You can put that in quotation marks. Purdy things. Okay, Julius' project was a skeletal suit he intended to wear. A collection of metal frameworks attached to mechanical joints at the shoulders, elbows, hips, and knees. Julius' exosuit had leather straps and metal clamps that could hold the contraption in place on Julius' body. He'd been bragging that it would make him even faster and stronger than he already was. So it's a little bit weird. he constructs an ectoskeleton. Ectoskeleton. No, it's not Ghostbusters, not an ectoskeleton. It's an exoskeleton. Just to hold him in place. We also learned that Pickle's real name is Dilbert. So, they call him Pickle because Dilbert, Dill Pickle. Yeah. So, this is the interesting part where Pickle points it out. Sure, but I'm not just using an RF remote. I'm using the RF as an IR extender. I want my remote to be effective through walls, Pickle sniffed. I don't think the problem is my remote anyway. I've achieved my goal with my remote. If he hasn't achieved his goal, isn't it up to him to make adjustments? Why doesn't he, Pickle pointed at Julius, install an RFI filter in his signal path? Or you could change his frequency, or you could check his macros. He may have them programmed too close to mine. Pickle sniffed again. He didn't have a cold, he was just a perpetual sniffer. So, interesting thing is that they are both darker in skin color and they both have black hair. Don't know if that has any lore significance at all, especially since they live in a family of 3 with a younger brother, so an older brother, a younger brother, and a twin sister to the older brother. So yeah. So, Pickle narrowed his eyes at Julius to deliver the killing blow. He might have even stolen my macros. And then Julius says, I did not. The sound came out as a cross between a honk and a screech. I think I did that well. So, Miss Billings then pushes a button in her room, which a bunch of, robotic creations in the room begin slamming together, making noise. Very robotic in there. It's quite the robotics class. In my robotics class, I had to build with Legos. What a waste of time. So, from there on out, it's basically just getting ready to go home. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else interesting gonna happen. Not really. But the Pickle, he gets up from his desk and begins packing up his project and stuff. So, here's the quotation marks from here. He didn't take his eyes off of Pickle as he folded and refolded the project's robotic arms, so we saw when Julius stuck out his foot and tripped Pickle. Pickle, who wasn't the most coordinated kid anyway, lost his balance and flew forward into the desk in front of Julius. Pickle's big nose led the way wherever his face went, so his nose took the brunt of the impact when it hit the corner of the desk. Blood spurted from Pickle's nostrils as Julius snorted out a high-pitched laugh. Why'd I say laughed? It's a laugh, not a laugh. It's a laugh. But everybody was too focused on where they were going and stuff, so only Reed actually saw what happened. So, Pickle ran from the room, and Reed began getting mad. Shelly yelled after Pickle to wait up and stuff, and then Julius says, "What are you staring at?" And now it's just the 2 of them in the classroom. I'll read from his quotes while skipping around. He grinned at Reed. Bet you wish you could build something like this, huh, moron? I don't even know what you're doing in this class. I mean, your runty little friend may be a mini freak, but at least he has a few brain cells. And your other friend, that weird hair-chewing chick, is an uppity cow, but with a little makeup she wouldn't be too bad to look at. And she has brain cells too. You got nothing going for you. You're a freak, and nothing can make you worth looking at. And on top of that, you're all air up there, aren't you? Julius leaned forward and flicked the finger between Reed's eyes. Reed tightened his fist, and Julius noticed. What are you going to do? Hit me? Didn't you see what I did to your pickled friend? Julius laughed at his beyond annoying laugh. I didn't even have to lift a finger. I just moved my foot, and now he has a bloody nose. Just think of what I could do to you without giving him much effort. So Reed gets more and more angry. He remembers a past experience and stuff, being called monkey face in his childhood by Julius. Julius then goes on to say, see this here? I was going to use it to be stronger and faster, but I don't need to be stronger and faster. I'm already strong and fast. I figured out a better use. I'm going to get this thing working perfectly. I'm going to hold you down and put you into it. Then I'll control the exoskeleton, and it will make you do whatever I command it to do. You'll have to be my servant. I'm going to make you wait on me all day. You'll carry my books, tie my shoes, get my food, clean up after me. I'm even going to make you dance for me. What do you think about that, loser? Would you like to dance like a monkey for me? Reed is still not speaking, and so he says, Cat got your tongue? Want to see in action? It's pretty amazing if I do say myself. Do say so myself. I don't know, my words get all mangled up sometimes. So, Reed's going to end up mangling the lesson, wink wink. That's from the back of the book. So, Julius ties himself in, equips and gets ready to take care, get ready to move and stuff, lock himself inside. So then, here we go. Outside, a couple buses started their engines, and a baritone rumbling vibrated off the walls. If Reed didn't leave soon, he'd have to walk to the Gerard's house. He'd have to walk over 7 miles, all because he stood there like a paralyzed mute for the last several minutes. He shook his head to try and get his brain rebooted. Julius, heavy with the endoskeleton riding his body, leaned down and fiddled with the wires leading to the skeleton circuits. Reed wished he had the guts to reach out and shove Julius across the room, him and his stupid exoskeleton. But it was a good thing he didn't. A second later, Reed was glad he wasn't touching Julius. A radiant flash bursts up like fireworks as a power surge sparked in the exoskeleton. Julius' body twitched, his eyes widened, and he went rigid for several seconds. So, obviously the end of the exoskeleton shorted out, and he fell over basically, and hit his head on the desk. He's still alive though. Finally, Reed moved. Stepping over to Julius, Reed quickly locked the wrist and ankle joints. They fitted together with a satisfying snick. As soon as they did, Reed stepped back and grinned. And he just locked Julius into the exoskeleton. Oops, Reed said. He backed toward the classroom door. He finally found his voice. I must have locked you in. My bad. What the hell did you do, punk? Julius yelled. Unlock me. I don't think so, Reed said. Do what I tell you. Unlock me. Reed shrugged and grinned. And he left. I mean, there's a little bit more dialogue where he's just shouting at him to unlock him. And then Reed has a little dialogue where he says, I'm going to leave you here all night in the suit to treat you like how you treat others. And then he just leaves. That's about it. He catches the bus just in time right before it's about to leave. Thankfully, Mr. Jansen there waits for him a lot. So, on the bus he asked Pico, does it hurt? He said it doesn't really hurt. And then Shelley is reading out loud again. In the Dark Ages, Shelley said, harsh torture was commonly used to punish those who broke the law. Reed flinched. What? He turned to stare at Shelley. As always, she sat in the seat behind Pico and Reed. Her massive backpack and an extra book bag took up the rest of the seat. Did she know what he'd done? Her attention on her book, Shelley continued. When someone violated civil law, torture would be done in the town square, public display of the consequences for lawlessness of the deterrent. Oh, she was reading. Of course she was. So she's reading her AP history book. And she says a couple interesting things about tortures in here. They came up with truly morbid ways of inflicting excruciating pain. The Judas cradle, for example, impaled a victim for several days, with blood-curdling names like the breast ripper and the pier of anguish. Medieval torture devices were a testament to human ingenuity. And then Reed's like, torture, was that what I did to Julius? It probably was. Probably definitely is. But who really cares? He's a bully. He can last the night in there. I mean, he would have to pee himself, sadly, but, yeah. I think it's fair. Until it happens later. Wink. Nervous laughter. Listen to this, she said. You won't believe it. What? Reed asked. One of the most commonly used forms of torture was called the wheel. Those condemned to being constrained in this way had prolonged torture ahead of them. They were held in place, unable to free themselves. That sounds familiar. It was sometimes called the breaking wheel. Dun dun dun. You didn't expect that. They called it that, she continued, because it was used to crush the bones of the condemned. Ew, huh? Shelley looked at Reed with wide eyes. Then she returned her gaze to the book and read on. The device was designed for torture lasting over multiple days. The wheel is made up of tiny radio spokes, and the person subjected to it was tied to the whole wheel before a club or cudgel was used to beat their limbs. This process reduced the human to a mutilated bag of bones. What one onlooker described as a writhing, moaning monster with bloody tentacles. That's gross, Pickle said, without looking up from his puzzle. Totally, Reed agreed. He tried not to think about what Julius was experiencing right now. But hey, at least Julius wasn't tied to a medieval torture device, right? So, continuing on from there, we get to their home, in which Reed says that basically he lives in a poorish family, but his friends, he spends a lot of time there and such, and it's pretty enjoyable there. He's basically part of the family. They have a mini diorama of the house inside the house, and then just a mini model of the house inside the diorama of the house in the house. Say that 3 times fast. It's like the flip side of FNAF World, where you go down 3 layers and you just keep going down. It's a game inside of a game inside of a game inside of a game. But that's just a theory. A game theory. I had to do it. So Miss Gerard is leaving for the night. She's going to her book club. And basically, that's about all we get from her, except that she's nice and she likes, obviously likes Reed. They have a dog named Thals, and Thals comes with her too. So it's just the 4 of the kids in there. Now we meet Ore, who was a conglomeration of his siblings. I shall read from here. Which made him not as cute as Shelley, but much cuter than Pickle. His face, still round and a little pudgy, Ore had Shelley's large eyes and long lashes and full mouth, and he had his brother's nose. On Ore, the big nose was more amusing than ugly. He looked like a little baby bird. 6-year-olds could rock a look like that. Ore wouldn't have to worry about looks for a while. Kinda cute and nice. Very cute. So, basically, I keep saying basically, it's like the word of the day. I'm gonna try not to say it. Reed goes over how his project uses an actuator, motor, things like that. Pickle offers to help, but he declines to help because he wishes to do it himself. He also says that Reed also says that his exoskeleton's an alien exoskeleton because he doesn't know what else to do with it. Then, Pickle allows Ore to play with his robot by using the remote and taking the robot and smashing it into Shelley's house a few times. It doesn't hurt the house or anything. And that is when he asks a very interesting question. Hey, Pickle. Reed kept his gaze on the gyrating mini metal skeleton. Huh? Pickle looked up at Reed. That thing, Reed pointed at the remote in Ore's small hands, doesn't have much of a range, right? Pickle sniffed. It's a pretty great range, actually. I designed the remote to function through walls. That's how I combined the IR and RF. RF? Rockstar Freddy confirmed? No, it's not. So, if it was controlling something outside the house, how far would this range be, Reed asked. Pickle frowned. You mean if the skeleton was outside and Ore was inside? Yeah. Sure, that's what he meant. He didn't mean if the remote was controlling Julius' exoskeleton. No, he didn't mean that at all. Pickle tilted his head and thought about it. It might reach to a few feet outside the house. Maybe. Honestly, I never checked it before. It probably doesn't reach beyond the house. The outer walls would be thicker than the inside walls. More interference. Oh, Reed said, attempting to sound uninterested even though he had asked a question. Okay. So, basically what he did there is he's worried about the Julius being locked in the exoskeleton because he stole Pickle's, Aerith from it, so he's worried that he could be being controlled. Such as here. Ori had now had the robotic skeleton racing through the room in dizzying serpentine routes around furniture. Reed tried not to imagine Julius zipping around the robotics classroom in a similar fashion. If he was doing in his suit what Pickle's robot was doing here, Julius would be bashing the walls and furniture. He'd be, at the least, badly bruised. More likely, he'd have broken bones. Oh man, Reed thought. I might be truly torturing Julius. So Reed tries to play it off by saying, oh, it's impressive. And Pickle's like, okay. I mean, it's a little bit suspicious. So, then Ori starts using the robot to smash into the house more times. Shelly tries to jump in, and then Pickle, says that it's fine because it's not going to do it or anything at all. And that's basically the... Dang it, I said it again. And that's about it of that minor argument. So, Pickle says, I'm not going to take it away from you, Pickle assured his brother. I'm going to make it more fun. Pickle held up his metal endoskeleton, which was still whirring in an effort to respond to the remote's commands. Ori's lower lip returned to its normal position. He stopped playing with the remote and his face brightened. Yeah, what are you going to do? He came over and sat next to Pickle. I've got something cool to show you. It's something else you can do with this robot. So watch this. Pickle flipped a switch on the little robot. Now try it. Ori grinned and pushed upon the remote. The robot stood on its blockish head. What did you just do? Reed asked Pickle. Oh, I just turned off the joint constraints. So now my robot can go against logical joint directions too. Like yours, only on purpose. So Ori started clicking the buttons, making it flip its head off and turn into a metal contortionist. Kind of like an octopus, so he's moving around all sorts of directions now. He's moving it backwards, forwards, sideways, westwards, other directions that I don't know. And he's basically throwing it all the way across the room, just controlling it everywhere. I don't know why I said throwing it, it's not throwing it. So, in his head, instead of the sound of the robot's metal limbs contacting the hard floor, Reed could hear the snaps and pops of breaking bones. Julius's breaking bones. The sounds were in his head, weren't they? He was imagining and not hearing it, right? No, of course he wasn't hearing it. How could he hear it? Pickle said the remote's range wouldn't reach beyond the Gerard's house, and even if it was happening, Reed wouldn't be able to hear it. His ears weren't superhuman. They were miles from the school. If his mind was telling him he could hear Julius' bones break, his mind was lying. So Reed is starting to feel rotten for what he did, and he starts to consider going back to, the school and freeing him. So he tells the Pickle, I'm gonna get going, and I need to go and do something. Pickle's like, okay, where are you going? Of course he's not gonna say I have to go to the school and free Julius. That doesn't seem like a very good thing to say, because then they ask more questions like, why does Julius need to be freed? So he ends up becoming just a human statue and not saying anything. So they appear that there's... So Pickle says, Shelly, I think there's something wrong with Reed. Shelly looked up from a book. Of course something's wrong with Reed. He doesn't engage in enough intellection, and he lacks the appropriate niceness when it comes to schoolwork. I'm not talking about Reed's commonplace imperfections, Pickle said. I'm referring to the fact that he's currently making no sense and his body keeps forgetting how to remain animated. Well, see, that's what I like about Reed, Shelly said. Reed perked up momentarily, forgetting about everything, but finding out what Shelly liked about him. What's that? Pickle said. He rarely makes sense. I like that. It gives me a challenge and keeps me interested. Reed grinned like a maniac. Thankfully, no one was looking at him. So his love grows for Shelly. Then, all of a sudden, something large hits the door of the Gerard's house. Shelly says, "Wind must have come up. We probably lost another branch off the big fir tree," Pickle said. Reed looked out the window. Blackness was outside the windows now, since it was turning nighttime. In the reflection of the window, he watched Ori aim the robot at the house again. He watched it hit the miniature house. In the same instant, something hit the side of the house again with a reverberating thump. Reed tensed. He looked at his friends. Neither Pickle nor Shelly reacted to the latest sound. They were satisfied with the wind and fallen branch explanation for the second thump. So he continues hearing Ori smash the robot against the house, and then a thump come from the outside of his house too. It's starting to get a little bit interesting. Because, I mean, you know what's gonna happen if you're just going on about this. I mean, I knew what was gonna happen when I was reading this. I was 100% sure I knew it was gonna happen. I didn't want it to happen, but I knew it was gonna happen. So, Pickle ends up bringing back up, he never said where he was going. Another robot impact on the model house, another whomp outside. Pickle didn't mention the mimicking sound. So, Reed drops to the ground, and he loses all the courage to go outside again. He does not want to go outside. And he looks around, he's like, were all the windows and doors locked? What if they weren't? No, of course they are. Mr. Gerard wouldn't forget to lock up. She was fanatical about the safety, as she was keeping her children well fed. And then Reed and Pickle get into a little thing about, just if he was going to go, and he's like, oh no, my brain's just floating in the buffalo chicken sauce that we had tonight. Everything's good, everything's fine. It's okie dokie. He's like, okay. So all the food's gone. Then they start to get soda on the brain. And to follow up with that, Reed joins a little bit of the conversation, but he's not exactly into it. Then, the little robot started climbing up the side of Shelly's miniature house. It looked like it had somehow grown suction cup on the legs. It scaled the side of the toy house as if it was a spider. For a moment, Reed was mesmerized by the robot's functionality, but then he realized he was hearing something outside the Gerard's house. Something new. Something majorly disturbing. Something was crawling up the outside walls of the family room. No, that couldn't be. Could it? Reed blocked out the sound of the little robot's clicks and drones. Yes, there. You could hear a sort of scrabbling, similar to what it sounded like once he saw a raccoon climb up the side of his own house. Maybe it was a raccoon out there now. Maybe he was literally going insane. He was imagining all this. He had to be going insane. What he was hearing wasn't possible. But then, why would he suddenly be going loopy? Was it guilt? So, they go on to talk more about soda and stuff. And then Reed begins walking to the stairs. Pickle asks, why are you going to the stairs? And he's like, oh, I need to borrow a book. Yes, a book. Then Reed begins checking out all the upstairs rooms, the windows, trying to see if there's anything outside. He is very interested in it. Then they all say, we're going down to the corner to get sodas. Do you want to come with? And he makes the fatal flaw of any horror movie character ever. No, that's okay. You go ahead. I'll steer here if that's alright with you. Uh-oh. He chooses to stay alone. Not the best of decisions. So, they head out, and he's left alone at the house. Not very good. He swears that he's hearing things outside in the windows, but he's not very sure. He looks around all the rooms and stuff. Nothing. He looks outside, across the porch, in the windows, because Pickle's room faces out over the porch, and he doesn't see anything on the yard either. He's like, wow, there's got to be nothing. He goes back downstairs. He doesn't know where the little robot is. He wonders if Ori took it with him. Possibly. So he scoots over to examine the house closely, the miniature house. So, it's really accurate. There was a super miniature house inside the miniature house. Talk about realism. He goes on to have a little kindergarten flashback. And then he goes, aha! That's where the little robot went. It was inside the miniature house, behind the mini miniature house. Reed started to reach into the miniature house to rescue the robot before he could get a hand in through the front door, though the little robot skeleton raised up off the floor of the house. Reed jumped, then started to shake his head at the edginess, and that's when Julius sprang up from behind the model house. Uh-oh. In his mind, he called what he was seeing Julius because his vivid imagination had prepared him to see the boy the way he looked now, but Julius didn't look a thing like Julius. He was in fact exactly what Reed's mind had known Julius would be like. Now nothing more than a fleshy, octopus-like mass of pulpy limbs attached to a metal frame. Julius could no longer be called a boy. He couldn't be called human. Reed wasn't even sure Julius was alive. Yes, Julius moved, but Reed didn't know if that was just Julius initiating the movement, or if his corpse was just being controlled by the metal framework. Julius' face was slack, so there was no life there. It was slack because it looked like the bone structure of his forehead, cheeks, and jaw had been pulverized. His feature was so distorted he resembled some kind of crudely sewn cloth version of himself. No longer framed by wavy blonde hair, because that hair was now sticky and stringy with congealed blood. Julius' face was like a repulsive doll's face, a doll much worse than Alexa's baby doll, with the staring black eyes. So Julius is basically a zombie, or a zombie. So, he tries to think, and he's like, doors, and he's like, duh. He tries to go to the doors, then he realizes that he needs a key, because they locked the door when they went out. He does not have a key. Julius blocks the way to the next door, so he comes up with another idea. Upstairs, Pickle's room. He goes in there, he grabs a microscope off the floor, and swings it out blindly in front of him. But Julius isn't there. Reed looked around desperately. Where'd Julius go? Reed looked up. The Julius abomination dropped off the ceiling and landed on Reed before Reed could swing the microscope again. The impact knocked the microscope across the room from Reed's hand. So now he's being held down by Julius. He yells, "Let me go." He's trying his best to get away, but he can't. He's trying to get to the window now. His plan is to get through the window and then just take the fall down to the outside. It's better than being stuck in with Julius. He lets out a banshee-like cry and yanked his foot from Julius' grasp. He staggered to his feet and turned to the window. Before Reed could take a step, though, Julius was on him again. Reed got pinned underneath Julius' hideous remains in the metal frame strapped to them. He tried yelling out for help. There was nothing. Julius doesn't even have iris in his eyes anymore. It's just the white staring down at him. He has no idea what to do. Something dripped into Reed's face. He had to open his eyes. It was worse not knowing what was happening to him. Reed opened his eyes. Okay, maybe not knowing wasn't worse. Blood was pooling in the spongy mass of what used to be Julius' face. So now he's getting bleeded on. He prepares to move. He tries to, but he's being held down more and more. Please, please. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I didn't know this was going to happen to you. I just wanted you to be locked in overnight. I didn't want this to happen. He's begging now. And then all of a sudden, he hears the door open. This could be a saving call. He gets up. Oh, he can't get up. He tries to yell for help, but his voice is sore. It's not working. And he hears Ori say, "Can I play with the remote again, Pickle?" And yeah. Julius shifted and Reed allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe he could get away. But Julius does this. Julius' smashed hands somehow grabbed hold of Reed's outstretched hands. Julius' formless legs somehow managed to wrap tightly around Reed's ankles. Reed was now linked to Julius, as Julius was to his exoskeleton, and Reed knew what was going to happen next. With the pressure of Julia's face wedged against Reed's throat, Reed couldn't make a sound that could be heard downstairs. He was facing his worst nightmare, and he couldn't scream. Downstairs, Pickle responded to his little brother's question. Sure, Ori. Go nuts. We have all night. And this is the final part, Ori grinned and knelt on the floor next to the miniature house. So, he takes the little robot and gets it to crawl up from behind the miniature house. He maneuvers it out just to not get in trouble again. And he pretty much just throws it out the window of the house to see how it goes. And he swears he hears something in a bump above the floor inside, but he doesn't know. He begins manipulating the remote so fast his fingers were just a big blur. In response, the little robot shot off the toy's house perch and began spinning and thrashing. While Ori shouted in triumph, the little robotic skeleton began popping and snapping its metal limbs in all kinds of unnaturally delightful ways. And that is the end of The Breaking Wheel. Now, if you can't see why I like that, then I don't know what to tell you. Beautiful story. This was a long recording, but it was worth it. I hope you enjoyed, because I enjoyed reading it over again. It still gives me shivers. I'm shivering right now. Anywho, thank you for listening, and why don't you drop a like, maybe? It'd be nice. Or share it to your friends, That'd also be nice. After this comes He Told Me Everything. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.